In the spring of 1944, as the world trembled on the edge of the largest invasion in human history, a secret American unit prepared for battle, not with bullets and bombs, but with sound, paint, and imagination. This was the Ghost Army, officially known as the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, a deception unit whose mission was unlike anything the U.S. Army had ever attempted. While millions of soldiers trained for real combat, these 1,100 men trained to pretend to be thousands, to create entire phantom divisions and to fool German military intelligence into believing that massive forces existed where there were none. The Ghost Army was born from one of the most audacious ideas of World War II, that illusion could be as powerful as firepower. The origins of this secret unit trace back to 1943, when Allied leaders realized that deception had become a weapon in itself. The British had already proven it with Operation Fortitude, where fake tanks, dummy landing craft, and double agents convinced Hitler that the D-Day invasion would strike at Pas-de-Calais instead of Normandy. The Americans wanted their own deception specialists, a mobile, fast-thinking team that could move across Europe, setting up entire fake divisions to mislead German scouts and confuse their radio intercepts.
Out of this vision, the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops was formed, combining engineers, artists, sound technicians, and radio operators into one unit whose existence remained secret for nearly 50 years after the war. At the heart of this extraordinary experiment was Colonel Harry L. Reeder, who oversaw the unit's organization, and Major Ralph Ingersoll, a New York publisher and writer who had served under British deception experts. Together, they crafted a plan that fused art and warfare in ways no one could have imagined. Recruitment began quietly. Instead of seeking sharpshooters or infantrymen, the Army went to art schools, advertising agencies, and design studios. Young men who once painted billboards or studied sculpture found themselves wearing uniforms and sent to a top-secret base to learn the art of war, not to kill, but to trick. Among them were future luminaries like Bill Blass, who later became a world-famous fashion designer, and Ellsworth Kelly, who became a celebrated painter after the war. The Ghost Army's mission was threefold: visual deception, sonic deception, and radio deception, a triad designed to create the illusion of massive troop movements. To achieve visual deception, they used inflatable rubber tanks, jeeps, artillery, and airplanes that could be inflated in hours and deflated just as quickly. These life-size decoys, viewed from the air, looked real enough to fool enemy reconnaissance pilots. For sonic deception, the unit collaborated with engineers from Bell Labs, who developed massive loudspeaker systems capable of projecting pre-recorded battle sound and troop movements across several miles.
Radio deception was perhaps the most technical element. Trained operators mimicked the radio traffic of real divisions, following authentic communication patterns so German intelligence would intercept them and believe those divisions were genuinely present. The unit was activated in January 1944 at Camp Forest, Tennessee, under top-secret orders. Even other American soldiers had no idea what these men were really doing. Their cover story described them as a standard camouflage battalion. Yet behind the fences of their training ground, they practiced how to make fake armies appear real, how to park inflatable tanks in convincing formations, how to place fake tire tracks, how to simulate a camp of thousands with only a few dozen men. They learned the psychology of deception, how the enemy thought, what they expected to see, and how to exploit those expectations. As the months went by, the Ghost Army became masters of illusion. One of their earliest tests came before D-Day, when they helped mislead the Germans about where the Allies would cross the English Channel. Though their full participation in the deception around Operation Fortitude remained partly classified for decades, Evidence shows that elements of their radio teams played supporting roles in masking the true invasion location. But their real work began after the Normandy landings, when the Allied advance into Europe required continuous misdirection to keep the enemy guessing. The 23rd Headquarters Special Troops landed in France shortly after D-Day.
Their first major operation took place near Normandy, where they staged an elaborate performance to draw German artillery away from real units. They deployed inflatable tanks, painted fake insignias on their trucks, and blasted the sounds of armored divisions through the night. German reconnaissance planes flew overhead, photographed what they believed to be a full armored force, and adjusted their defenses accordingly, allowing real divisions elsewhere to advance with less resistance. The deception worked flawlessly. The Ghost Army operated close to the front lines, often within artillery range. Setting up an inflatable tank might sound safe, but it wasn't. They were still in combat zones, and if discovered, they had almost no defense. Their real weapon was belief, making the enemy see what wasn't there. Each operation required meticulous planning. The unit had to understand not only where to stage their fake division, but also how the Germans were likely to observe it. They would analyze aerial reconnaissance routes, radio interception patterns, and even local rumors. Everything had to fit together. The fake vehicles, the dummy camps, the fake radio chatter, the sound effects. A single inconsistency could expose the entire operation. As the Allied armies pushed through France and into Belgium, the Ghost Army executed more than 20 deception missions across Europe, each designed to protect real troops by drawing fire or attention away from them.
Their ability to disappear as quickly as they appeared made them invaluable. They could arrive at a new location under cover of night, inflate hundreds of fake tanks, play recordings of engines and movement through loudspeakers, and by morning appear as a full division ready for battle, only to vanish 48 hours later when the real troops took their place. Their code name for each mission was simple: Operation. Operation Bettenborg, Operation Brest, Operation Viersen. Each represented a stage in their journey through the European theater. And yet, for decades after the war, almost no one knew these names. The men were sworn to secrecy, their work classified until 1996. When the truth finally emerged, historians were stunned. Many Allied successes, once attributed to luck or German miscalculations, were now reinterpreted in light of the Ghost Army's invisible hand. The Ghost Army impersonated up to 30,000 soldiers with barely 1,100 men. They painted fake unit symbols on trucks, created false headquarters, and sent decoy patrols into villages to be seen by enemy spies. They even used makeup to disguise themselves as officers of other divisions. Every detail mattered, from the markings on vehicles to the type of cigarette an officer would smoke. Their artistry became a battlefield weapon, saving thousands of real lives.
Operation Brest in August 1944 was one of their first major successes. As the Allies surrounded the port city of Brest, the Ghost Army created a diversion to make the Germans believe a large American armored division was preparing to attack from a different direction. Inflatable tanks, fake convoys, and loudspeaker trucks filled the countryside. The deception caused the Germans to reposition their defenses, weakening their true lines. The illusion saved countless Allied troops from heavier resistance. Later in September, Operation Bettenberg further demonstrated their effectiveness. Near Luxembourg, the Ghost Army created a phantom presence of the 6th Armored Division, convincing German forces that an attack was imminent. Meanwhile, real divisions quietly moved elsewhere. These illusions were not just theater. They were acts of warfare executed with precision under immense danger. Their most famous operation came months later, in March 1945, Operation Viersen. This was the Ghost Army's masterpiece. As the Allies prepared to cross the Rhine River into Germany, the Ghost Army was tasked with simulating the crossing of the 30th and 79th Infantry Divisions near Viersen, north of the real attack zone. For several nights, they inflated hundreds of rubber tanks and trucks, lit false campfires, played engine noises through enormous speakers, and transmitted fake radio traffic. German reconnaissance planes observed the scene and concluded that a major crossing was imminent at Viersen. They moved their reserves to counter it, leaving the real crossing point at Remagen and other areas less defended.
The result was a stunning success. Allied casualties during the real crossing were drastically reduced. Operation Viersen became the epitome of deception warfare. When the men of the Ghost Army watched the real divisions cross the Rhine safely, they knew their invisible battle had saved thousands of lives. Yet, when the war ended, they received no medals, no public recognition. They were ordered to keep their mission secret. Their files were sealed, their stories silenced. For decades, even their families didn't know what they had done. Some veterans joked that their war never happened, but they knew what they had achieved. The Ghost Army had waged psychological warfare with unprecedented creativity. They had proven that deception could shape battles just as powerfully as guns and tanks. During the post-war years, many members returned to civilian life, becoming artists, designers, and engineers. Their wartime experiences influenced their later careers. Bill Blass's fashion designs carried echoes of military precision. Ellsworth Kelly's abstract art reflected the patterns and shapes of camouflage. Decades later, historians began uncovering the classified records. In the 1980s and 1990s, documents were declassified, revealing the truth of their missions.
In 1996, PBS aired a documentary called The Ghost Army, bringing their story to public attention. The men, now in their 70s, finally spoke about the work they had been forbidden to discuss for half a century. The revelations astonished military historians. The Ghost Army had executed 21 deception missions across Europe between 1944 and 1945, from Normandy to the Rhine. They had saved thousands of soldiers' lives by diverting enemy fire and confusing German intelligence. Their combination of visual, sonic, and radio deception was the first of its kind and laid the foundation for modern psychological operations, or PSYOPs. Today, the Ghost Army's tactics are studied in military academies worldwide. They represent the fusion of art and strategy, the idea that war can be fought not only with weapons, but with perception. In 2022, after years of advocacy by veterans and historians, the U.S. Congress finally awarded the Ghost Army the Congressional Gold Medal, recognizing their extraordinary service. For many of the surviving members, it was a bittersweet moment. They had waited nearly 80 years for acknowledgement, but their story had at last been told. As one veteran said during the ceremony, "We fought not with bullets, but with brains." Their courage lay not only in deception, but in creativity under fire. They risked their lives without ever firing a shot, proving that imagination could save lives. Their story remains one of the most fascinating, least-known chapters of World War II, a testament to human ingenuity in the darkest of times. The Ghost Army's legacy endures not just as a tale of wartime deception, but as a reminder that sometimes the most powerful weapon is belief itself.